So Donald Trump's popularity, according to this YouGov poll, is tracking negative on every issue except LGBT people. Thank you, Democrats, for deciding that we weren't worth your time. My guess is the real reason for this disparity is that Donald Trump really hasn't done much about LGBT people, right? Like, in terms of where the rhetoric has been focused, where the attention of the White House has been focused, it's been overwhelmingly directed towards immigration, defunding the government, entitlement spending, tariffs, that sort of thing. Largely like economic policy, foreign policy, that kind of stuff. Obviously, there have been statements with regards to queer people, but they haven't been like the focus. There might be more during Pride Month. There might be more, like there's going to be crackdowns and pride parades and so on. His trans sports bans are depressingly popular, though. Yeah, I mean, no one's really pushing back against that rhetoric, right? Nothing's happened. It's but like you have like a handful of instances where somebody thinks a trans woman might have done like better than she should have at sports. What's a recent example? They've got like a handful from a decade of this talking point. You think part of the reason Trump hasn't done much about LGBT folk is from how many wealthy people are openly gay now? Well, gay people kind of won a cultural victory. That is to say, the popularity of gay marriage is so great in the United States, even among independents and Republicans, that even though the GOP officially on a state level and federally want to revoke gay marriage, they don't really talk about it. It would just not be met well. There are a few Republican politicians who have touched on the issue. Usually it just gets them ratioed. It doesn't lead to much. Gay people are just too integrated. They just are. Unfortunately, trans people didn't really get the opportunity to be integrated to the extent that gay people have, right? Like, trans people in the public eye haven't existed for very long. Gay people have been the subject of like public open policy discussion for decades, obviously going back a long time, but like largely from the 80s and the AIDS crisis. Whereas trans people, again, have been around for a long time, but mostly since, God, like 2015, relatively recent. Isn't Scott Besson gay too? It doesn't matter. That's irrelevant to the broader discussion. It literally doesn't matter. Like, anyone who's hypocrisy posting over Scott Besson, it does not matter. They're all gay. LGBT, other, immigration, economy, federal workforce, education, DEI, crime, technology. Who's voting down Trump on technology? What does that even mean? Foreign policy, executive power, environment, energy, healthcare. Healthcare. Minus 31 net. That's pretty impressive. Definitely AI. Yeah, I guess. The don't stop AI stuff? No, that's only from the past few days. It can't be that. Isn't it good that Trump's removing Syria sanctions? Sure, but that's not what we're talking about right now. Public opinion on Donald Trump's policy plans and actions. Oh my God, there are 25 pages of this. Okay, wait, hold on. Let's take a look at what's most and least popular. How about that? Requiring companies to fully disclose prices when selling tickets to live events. Plus 74. Makes sense. Eliminating federal taxes and Social Security benefits. Plus 68. Makes sense. Making it a federal crime to non-consensually publish intimate images, including AI-generated nudes, and requiring online platforms to remove them within 48 hours they be reported. Plus 66 positive. Makes sense. A lot of these popular ones are, they're pretty self-evident, right? Expanding funding for apprenticeships as alternatives to four-year college degrees. I'm okay with that. I know that's the kind of thing fascists will sometimes abuse, but I'm okay with it. Plus 56. Designating criminal cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. I said this in the offline segment that I recorded. Criminal cartels absolutely are foreign terrorist organizations, but this designation does give the president the legal justification to strike them without congressional approval, which I don't agree with. So I agree with this in a colloquial sense. I don't agree with it in like a policy sense, but I understand the average person wouldn't know the difference. Eliminating federal taxes on tips, plus 55, makes sense. Using the Alien Enemies Act to deport immigrant gang members, drug dealers, and cartel members. I don't agree with using the Alien Enemies Act at all, but plus 55 on that one. Releasing the JFK records, banning artificial food dyes, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah. So a lot of these are just like basic dumb guy, here, hold on. What's least popular? Bring me all the way back. There we go. Allowing automakers to withhold reports of certain non-fatal self-driving car crashes, minus 73. Removing building codes that are intended to protect against natural disasters, minus 71. Cutting funding for scientific research on cancer, minus 63. Jesus. Replacing certain frontline healthcare workers with artificial intelligence avatars, minus 62. It is a pro-cancer administration. That is true. I still don't get the cancer one. They just want you to die. Why do you call cartels terrorist organizations? It doesn't make sense. I mean, they're non-state militarized agencies that commit acts of violence and destruction against civilian targets in order to propagate a political message and favor themselves. I mean, it's like they're definitionally terrorist organizations. It's just, again, like a designation that I think has bad foreign policy consequences. Cartels are political? Yes. All institutions are political, but cartels especially 100%. They literally like work within the Mexican government. They have like regions of control. They operate as de facto states. I mean, the Taliban's primary goal was reacquiring Afghanistan and becoming the legitimate government of Afghanistan. Does that make them not terrorist when they blow up like civilians because like their actions are like based on statehood interests rather than like ideological, or is it because they justify it through Islam? But we know what their real impression is. Whatever. They kill politicians across Mexico? Yeah, non-politically, though. Canceling EPA grants aimed at protecting children from toxic chemicals and pesticides. The State Department spending $400 million on armored Teslas to transport diplomats. Shutting down the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Yada, 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 yada. Oh, man, they really did the data mail business with this one, didn't they? Look at that. A majority of Americans seem to support the creating a commission to audit the federal government and cut government spending. Doge has been a massive failure so far, by the way. I think I was planning on talking about this, but I didn't. Maybe I forgot to. I'm stupid. But there was literally an article where an interviewer talked with a person who was with Doge, who started like trying to audit the federal government, and then he backed out because he realized, like, wait, they're actually pretty efficient. Hold on a second. Do I want to make its own segment out of that? Nah, probably not. Give me a snippet. Now that he's here, he says he finds himself surrounded by people who, quote, love their jobs, who came to the government with a sense of mission driving their work. In a sense that makes the Doge agenda a little more complicated, because if half the government took a buyout offer, then we wouldn't have to do much more, he says, implying software can replace departing employees. We just use software to plug holes. Most socially and politically literate Silicon Valley tech guy. But that's not what's happening. Lavingia's skills with automation, which have helped him keep Gunroad lean, are what he hopes to bring to the VA. But when it comes down to it, what he's found is a machinery that largely functions, though it doesn't make decisions as fast as a startup might. I would say the culture shock is mostly a lot of meetings, not a lot of decisions, he says. But honestly, it's kind of fine, because the government works. It's not as inefficient as I was expecting, to be honest. I was hoping for more easy wins. Very funny. Oh, here's another fun one. Since the Social Security Administration installed new anti-fraud checks on claims made over the phone, only 2 claims out of over 110,000 were found to be likely fraudulent, according to internal documents I obtained. The policy has slowed down payments, though. Retirement claim processing is down 25%. Incredible. That's the goal? I mean, yeah, but, you know. Yeah, and this one up here, that's a popular one. Banning transgender athletes from participating in women's sports. We'll have to see how things go in the long run, right? The trans sports thing with trans women, listen, I'm not giving up the fight on that. But to the average person who is, as we've established over years of me doing this stream, is a retard, this seems like a no-brainer, right? They think that a trans woman is a person who, like, looks like me but shaves and maybe, like, does their voice up a little bit and has a bow in their hair. Given, like, in light of that information, you're getting an answer you'd more or less expect, I suppose. And has awful taste in music. Well, that part is true. It's really where the public opinion shifts on the other issues, right? We'll have to see how things shift on, like, the don't say gay law, right? Like the popularity of banning any discussion of, say, gender, which in practice means banning, like, trans and gay people from being vocal in schooling, or you know, anything that extends beyond the military and sports, because those ones are going to be considered layups. I just don't understand how people can be so riled up about things that don't impact them. You have to understand that to the average person who thinks trans women shouldn't be allowed to play in women's sports, they're not, quote unquote, riled up about it. It's that a lot of them think it's a no-brainer. Like, there is a subset of the population, most of them Republicans, who are super fixated on them. But for the most part, this is people just shrugging and going, yeah, that makes sense. you know? They don't think about it that much. Yeah, it's a common sense argument thing, exactly. Trans people are too strong for sports but too weak for the military. I know that it's seen like as a zinger, but as Matt Walsh said on Twitter, the argument isn't that you're too weak for the military, it's that you're too mentally ill for the military. You have to know the argument, right? Plus 22 points of support for designating large-scale fentanyl trafficking as a weapon of mass destruction, ending congestion pricing in New York City. Why 40% support? In car Hitlerites. New Jersey people. They flooded the poll. Plus 21 for the Golden Dome. I just think it's notable that for the most part, the things on which Donald Trump is most unpopular are the things that he's been talking about the most. Keep in mind, like, economy is up here at -8, which is relatively good for him, but keep in mind that he started with this being his main lead. This was his, like, top thing, you know? Immigration and the economy. These two were his top numbers going into the inauguration. Everything's sinking. Plus, turning on in the Golden Dome proves we're literally a nation of retards. Yeah, I could have told you that. Walmart CFO says price hikes from tariffs could start later this month as retailer beats in earnings. This is not going to help with Trump's approval. Walmart beat first quarter earning estimates but fell just short of sales expectations. Well, that's nice. In an interview with CNBC, CFO John David Rainey said tariffs are still too high, even with the recently announced agreement to lower duties on imports from China to 30% for 90 days. We're wired for everyday low prices, but the magnitude of these increases is more than any retailer can absorb. It's more than any supplier can absorb. And so I'm concerned that consumers are going to start seeing higher prices. You'll begin to see that likely towards the tail end of this month, and then certainly much more in June. Oh, no. Well. Folks, we have no choice. I mean, in Walmart's case, that is largely true, right? Not to say they operate on thin margins or whatever, but like a 30% tariff, like even ignoring the 140 or whatever percent tariff that we had until recently, the 30% tariff, I mean, you'd expect like a 30% price increase. Yeah, get your shopping done. Did consumer sentiment go down again? Again! Down to 50.8, down from 52.2 in April and hitting its second lowest reading on record. Oh my God, it's still going down, even though the prices haven't been affected that much over the past month. You'd think, if anything, sentiment would go up because of the lessening of the tariffs, even though we haven't been really hit with the price increase yet. Will PlayStation prices go up? Sony warns of possible price hikes due to tariffs. The gamer community will not forget this. My BTOB company missed its sales goals by 30% last month. 30%? Jesus, don't get laid off. BTOB, bring their own beer? The fact that Trump's approval ratings are already in the water, despite the fact that we still haven't been hit with the effect of the tariffs, is pretty impressive. And I suspect that even though it is alarming that the LGBT policies, adjacent policies he's put out yet are largely positive, I think that come Pride Month, it'll be more a subject of discussion. More people will push back against it. Trump will never drop below 35%, though. Well, in aggregate, probably not, but in individual policies, there are some things that, again, keep in mind that they love to play this game where whenever Trump does something really bad or stupid, Republican voters pretend that it wasn't Trump who did it. Or they'll say, like, yeah, that was bad, but, you know, but I still support him in aggregate.